Pat, I see you too. I appreciate the invitation, Pat. Thank you.
You bet, Gary. Long time no see. My
Yeah,
goodness.
it's been a while. Yeah. You look like you're living the good life. So
Likewise, sir.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I see Doug Rundle. Congratulations, Doug,
Hi, thank you.
on your Best in Show.
That was fun. Yeah,
Did you get to
Awesome,
go to
Doug.
the opening?
I did. Yeah, it was good. It was really well done, and Giannis did a great job on being the juror. And yeah, I actually sold. I had 2 pieces, and I sold the other one, not the one I won an award on, but the other one.
How about that? What was the other one, Doug?
It was a sort of an abstract of some foam on water
Mhm.
up at the Japanese garden.
Nice.
Well, I think maybe we'll think about starting since it's a couple minutes after 8. Pat, I'm going to hand off letting people in from the waiting room off to you. Can you swing that?
Sure, will do.
And welcome to, when I close this thing. Welcome to everybody. I'm glad you're here. Tax Day 2022. We have a nice evenings tonight. We have a pretty long monthly challenge. I wanted to encourage you all to continue to contribute to that. We got about a 15-minute show with, I think, close to 100 pictures in it tonight. So that'll be fun to see. And it's a great way for you to share your work with the group when we're having these meetings. So when you get the notice about submissions, I certainly hope you'll think about doing it. It's kind of a fun thing. Before we get going, I was wondering if there's anybody here that's a guest. I feel like I saw some names that I didn't recognize. Does anybody here a guest that might want to introduce yourself?
I'm Larry Blake. I'm new here.
Hi, Larry. Do you live in Portland?
Yes, I do. Born and raised.
Oh, wow. Where'd you go to high school?
Wilson High School.
Huh? My wife and her mother went to Grant.
Yeah, it's a nice new school now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, my kids went to Lincoln. It's going to be brand new too.
Yeah,
Well-
exactly. Yeah, they've come a long way since I was in school.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, welcome, Larry. Thanks for coming by. Anybody else here that's a guest tonight? No. Well, how about humble brags? Does anybody got anything going on they want to let us know about? We just heard a little bit from Doug, but maybe you should say it again now that everybody's here, Doug. Looks like you won that contest.
Yeah, it was the show at the Oregon Society for Artists was really good this year. I think there were about 70 images submitted, and we had several folks from PPF recognized with awards. Don Jacobson got an award. Bob Bergstrom, Christina Selznick got an award. So yeah, it was a good showing.
Good. Now, is the show open now? You guys been over for that?
It's open through the 27th. Yeah, in the gallery there.
Cool.
I still have some work up at the Walters Cultural Arts Center in Hillsborough. It's called Fire and Ice. It's a juxtaposition of thermal areas in Yellowstone along with ice formations in the gorge. First Tuesday in May is a reception. I'm planning to be there. And so if anybody lives out in that area and would like to stop by, I'd love to see you.
Is fire and ice the theme of a show you're in, or is it the theme of your particular photos?
Well, there's also a ceramicist group that's there. And originally the show was just going to be called Fire, but I convinced the curator to call it Fire and Ice. So some great ceramics, and I've got 37 photographs there, and it's a very nice venue.
Nice,
People should take advantage of it.
right on. Thanks, Don. Anybody else have shows or exhibitions or, well, and Randy? I talked about it in the newsletter, but maybe you should let us know about your lens work.
Yes, I was selected by Lenswork to have my multiple exposure cityscapes printed in the February edition that came out in March. And the online version just came out too. And it was kind of like a bucket list dream for me. And I wanted to just say that the PPF in general and several members who I've already thanked have been very, very supportive and encouraging to me. And I just wanted to appreciate everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. The reproduction is really nice. And that's a prestigious local, not local anymore, but it's a great thing. Good job.
Thank you.
And her work looked absolutely great in the magazine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
have
looking,
that magazine here. It's wonderful. The new issue and Randy's multiple exposures are just breathtakingly beautiful. Just page after page of wonderful pictures. So congratulations, Randy.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous.
it is really well done.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Has got something going on? I wanted to let you all know that we have some plans in the works. Well, it's been planned. I'm going to be announcing it after this meeting on the 26th of this month, which I think is a week from Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. We're going to go down and visit Austin Granger's show that's at the Trinity Episcopal Church. And we're going to meet up there at 11 o'clock, and everybody's welcome to join us. Austin will be there. He's not going to do a formal talk because it's not really his trip, but he's going to be there to talk to us and answer questions and watch us admire his work. If you don't know Austin Granger's work, it's really quite lovely and quite well made. And I would appreciate if anybody wants to come along, they could come and have a look at it with us. So that's 11 o'clock, Trinity Episcopal Church, a week from tomorrow on the 26th. And you can look in your email box in the next day or so for a reminder about that with more details. So please come join us at that.
Yeah, hey Ray,
Yeah,
it's 147 Northwest 19th, and I'm a member there, and I'll try and be there. The church is normally locked every day, and you'll probably have to, if you get there early, do the intercom to the office so they can let you in, but I'll try and be there also.
yeah. Rebecca said she's going to try to be there too. I talked to her about it, and she's going to try to get that door open, because otherwise we have to enter through the office, which is kind of at the apex of that U-shaped courtyard, I think, right? If I remember correctly, that's
Yeah,
where the office,
right.
yeah. Okay. I haven't been there. I used to do weddings in there, but I haven't been back for a show for quite a while. So that's the 26th.
You had a show there.
I did, but at that time, there was doors were wide open. You just went in. It wasn't a big deal at that time. The other thing we got going on is we started this month with in-person print sharing meetings. Those are from 6 to 8 on the first Monday of the night at the Multnomah Arts Center. We had a nice turnout. We had the print racks out, and we were looking at people's prints and having long discussions, too long in a way. We went overtime, so we're going to reserve a little more time at the center so we don't have to worry quite so much about getting out of there. So you'll be getting reminders on that too, but that's the first Monday of the month, 6 to 8, Multnomah Arts Center. And then we're, of course, Lucky Lab came after that. Although they closed early. I think they cut us off pretty early there. Okay, anybody else have a special thing they want to say before we go on? I have this, the monthly challenge this month was, the theme was spring. And just as a reminder, the theme is always pretty general. And if you don't feel like doing the theme, just do whatever you please. It's not crucial that you do theme. It's just a great way for everybody to have a look at your work. Hopefully in this case anyway. Here, so I'm going, let me see if I can make this work. Oh.
Hello? Yeah. Oh, Tony.
We already have a service. Thank you. I'm in the middle of a meeting. I can't always talk.
Thank you to everyone that submitted. Let's see. Thank you to, again, thank you to everyone that submitted. Sorry, I was reading a chat that somebody sent in. That, unless somebody else has an announcement, I think we're ready, Pat, for us to do Gary's talk. Oop, you're muted.
Are you ready to, Gary? You're muted too, Gary. Sorry.
Testing, testing. One,
Okay.
2, 3.
Okay, well, let me introduce you. Thanks, Ray. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our guest speaker this evening. Gary Randall is a man of many talents. He's an award-winning landscape, nature, and wildlife photographer whose work has appeared in many publications. He's a teacher, a traveler, an explorer. He's a licensed outfitter and guide who conducts tours and photography workshops primarily in the Columbia River Gorge and Mount Hood National Forest, but also throughout the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. He also writes a monthly column for his local newspaper focusing on photography-related subjects, and he has been recognized by his community for his outstanding volunteer work, which has on occasion earned him the Volunteer of the Year award from Mount Hood Cultural Center. I first met Gary in 2014 when I attended a workshop with him up on Mount Hood, his stomping ground. At that workshop, I learned a lot about landscape photography, including how to size up and frame a shot, how to really see how those leading lines can guide the eye through a scene, how to work the heck out of a location, and cool stuff like how to read a histogram, a real revelation to me at the time. Many of the lessons I learned from Gary at that workshop have been applied to every type of photography I've tried my hand at since. I know you'll enjoy hearing about his lifelong journey with photography and his explorations and adventures in the Alaskan wilderness. And by the way, Gary is happy to take any kind of questions throughout his talk. So if you've got some question you want to ask him as he moves along, then feel free to do so. So with that, welcome Gary Randall.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up and showing an interest in what I do. Pat makes me sound pretty respectable, but I'm just some guy that's addicted to photography and have been for quite some time now. So let's see, tonight, what I thought I would do is just show you some of the landscape scenery and scenery from Alaska that I've photographed over the last 10 years or so. I've also got a few photographs of some of the wildlife that we photograph along the way as well. So if I can get the screen share to come up here, let me see here. I know I can do this. Let's see, share screen. I want to share that screen. Did that work?
Yes.
Oh, good. You can see I'm really confident.
Looks
All
great,
right.
Gary.
What I've done is I've put these basically in order of when I've taken these. So it's not necessarily by subject, other than these are some photographs that I've taken of some of the scenery up there. So if you guys have any questions at all, just shout them out. I think it's better if we take questions along the way than we try to remember everything at the end of it, take a bunch of questions then. So just let me know. So the first one here is actually the very first trip that I took to Alaska. The backstory is that I met my wife, my current wife, at a PPA meeting in Portland, and she came to listen to me talk, and she lived in Alaska. So through developing a relationship with her, I was able to head up to Alaska for a few trips just to get to know her. And this was the first night that I stepped off the plane in Alaska, and it was about maybe 2.5 hours after I stepped off the plane, we had gone back to her cabin that was on the side of the Knik River. And we walked down to the river, and the lights, the northern lights, were just glowing in the sky. So it was quite a welcome for me. And of course, once I got there and I saw this, I thought northern lights were no problem at all, like they shown in Alaska every night or something. But of course, it's not the case. But this is the Knik River with the Chugach Mountains in the background. So this is in the Alaska Range. And this is the name of the mountains that's leaving me right now, but this is just to the left side of Denali. So the Alaska Range is just so rugged, so beautiful. I just love the mountains up there. And this is Denali. This is taken from the south viewpoint. So this is kind of a opposite direction from where you see a lot of the photographs taken within the Denali National Park. This was a sunrise. And this was one of the first mornings that I spent up there too. We got up real early and drove up to Denali and caught this sunrise along the way. So this is within the park. This is some of the foothills in the Alaska Range. And this is in the fall. And so you can see the tundra down here is turning red and yellow. And this is a drainage, and I just thought it was kind of a beautiful photo, you know. So you can see the snow up here. What doesn't show in this photograph really is the scale. This is just so immense and so massive. So here's another photo from within the park, and this is in the fall. You can see the tundra in the bottom is turning yellow. So
Hey, Gary, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I have
certainly.
one too.
Okay, this is Giannis, and like when you go out into a landscape, and like some of this landscape is so overwhelming, do you have like a thought process or a filter that you're using, you know, like so you know when to click the shutter?
Well, I know when to click the shutter when I feel that the composition looks the way I want it to. And my composition, I'll usually start wide and move my way in on a composition. I'd love to use my 24-70 just for that. So if I see some scenery, my first propensity is to sit there and look at the wide scene. But there's many times when I'll bring my 70 to 200 out and start taking smaller, intimate pieces of the scenery. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but some of the scenery can be overwhelming because it's so huge. And so I like to start with my wide angle shots, typically at 24mm. A lot of times, if you go wider than that, things start getting smaller and you just don't get the scale of the mountains or the scenes itself. So does that answer your question?
Well, Gary, it kind of tangentially is
Okay.
like when you say composition, you know, like that brings to mind many different definitions. One is, you know, rule of thirds and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then the second is composition is like what fills your heart. And so I'm kind of looking for, again, it's like you have an electrical impulse that triggers that shutter. And I'm looking for the motivation for that electrical impulse.
Well, I'm just talking for myself personally, and I rarely keep any kind of compositional rules in my mind while I'm out there taking photos. So I don't really think about rules of thirds and whatnot. And I've talked to a lot of people through my years of photography. And I know there are a lot of people that are able to see the composition without even having to think about it. It's almost like it comes natural to them. And I think I kind of have that. And so if I'm seeing everything fall into place, a beautiful foreground or a rhythm to the photo, angles lining up right or something, a lot of times I'll just feel the photograph and I'll take the photograph. Many times I'll come back and then try to apply some sort of compositional rule to it. And many times it falls into place. So I'd like to think that I kind of have a natural eye for composition. And so if I'm composing the photograph and I feel the composition, then a lot of times that's when I'm going to take the photograph. Rarely will I take the photograph at all if I'm not feeling it. So there is an emotion that's involved in seeing something fall into order as in a way that creates at first an emotional response from you. And a lot of times if it'll create emotional response from you, your viewer will have the same response. So it's, with me, it's more just seeing a harmonious composition without having to think about the technical part of it. So it's just feeling it's that feeling you get when you see it and it all falls together. And a lot of times I'll see it outside of the camera and I'll try to capture it, create some sort of composition that'll capture what I saw, and it just won't work. There's many times when I'll go through there and grab my camera and take some photos. I know I can see it, but the camera just won't take it. I just can't feel it. So I think that's kind of it. A lot of people have to understand all the compositional rules and apply some sort of order to their photographs, when really I think that we all should probably try to feel the composition more than trying to put it in some sort of mathematical order of some sort. So I'm not sure if that's going to answer your question either, but I tell you what, when I see it, when I see that photo and I'm able to capture it as well, and then it feels good. It just makes me feel like I really want to do that. And I take that photographs, and I may take 3 or 4 trying to adjust the composition or zoom in or zoom out. And that just that one is going to be the one that I like. So, yeah.
So Gary, do you ever crop your pictures after in post-processing?
Rarely. I rarely do, because I try my best to try to get it right in the field. The only time I really concentrate on, the only time that I really crop is when I'm trying to maybe correct a horizon, or maybe I have something I want to, maybe a tree came in the corner or something like that. I want to maybe crop that out, but I rarely crop my composition. So I'll rarely shoot wide and then crop into a composition in there. If I can see that composition, I'm going to get the lens out that's going to be able to get that proper focal length to be able to get that composition right without cropping it in post. That's the approach that I try my best to take. Okay. All right, let's take another photo here. This is the Matanuska Glacier. And if you look really close here, you'll see some people up here. And that kind of gives you some scale about how large this glacier really is. So, and I love taking people out onto a glacier if they've never been out on one before. It's just a really good feeling to see people, how they react when they get out there in on a glacier. This is a photograph on a glacier. This is a layer of silt on top. I mean, really fine powdery silt on top of a layer of ice. And then on top of the silt is a fine layer of water, maybe 1/4 of an inch thick at the most. And then what's going on is that there are bubbles coming up through the ice that are creating these mounds kind of looking thing. They're not really mounds so much, but they have this depth to them that make them look like mounds. And then there's the rivulets of water that are kind of running away on the ice too. I can just sit here and look at this, for hours, and it just fascinated me. When I first saw this on the top of the ice on that glacier, I just had to sit there and photograph it for a while. kind of gives you a abstract photo, and again, this is hard to find the scale. So the scale would be each one of these kind of bubble blobs here in the foreground is maybe 6 inches in diameter. So I
Gary,
love
taking.
taking.
Gary, what lens did you use to capture this one?
This one was probably with my, hold on, I'll tell you what focal length it was. This one was taken at, let's see, this was at 70 millimeters. So I probably had my 24 to 70 on and I zoomed into it. So, yeah. And that was standing, probably chest high looking down. Okay. And the reflections on the glacier are just beautiful, especially when, if the wind's not blowing, it just gets so glassy. And this is taken in August. So this is towards the end of the summer before the glacier starts to freeze back up again. So. And don't miss opportunities if you see them. If this photograph was taken while actually my wife was driving down the Seward Highway along the Turnagain Arm out on the mud flats. And down on the Turnagain Arm, there is a boar tide that these surfers will catch and they'll ride that wave up the arm almost up to Girdwood. Well, this guy was out on the mud flats on a layer of water, and he was just reflecting perfectly. And I told my wife, I said, stop, let me out. I got to get this photograph. And so there wasn't really any place to pull over. There wasn't anybody behind us. So she kind of stopped, let me out. She went down the road, turned around, came back, and I photographed this guy. And I just love these photographs that I got from this. And I got a whole series of them. So I call him the Silver Surfer. This is a sunset on the Turnagain Arm. On the left-hand side, you can see the Kenai Mountains. That's on the Kenai Peninsula. And on this side is the Chugach Mountains. And we're actually down along the water off of the Seward Highway. This is about maybe half hour or 45 minutes outside of Anchorage. And this was in August as well. This is the Turnagain Arm in the wintertime. So this is a flow of ice on top of the water. And this was taken, let me tell you exactly when this was taken. That photograph was taken at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's as high as the sun is going to get that day. So at this time of the year, and this was in January, I believe. No, it was in December. This was in December. And so that time of the year, you almost get a sunrise all day long, or it meets sunrise meets sunset in the afternoon, so or around noon. So the sun comes up, hits the tops of the mountains, and then starts skirting the horizon and goes back down again. So the days are rather long, but the sun doesn't really get very high up in the sky. So, and this is at the latitude of Anchorage. So the further you go north, then the further or the more darkness you're going to get in the wintertime. So.
Hey, Gary, can I ask you
Yes.
a question?
Certainly.
When you're processing these, I think it's called, are you choosing this sort of, you feel like you have kind of a muted palette compared to a lot of color landscape photography that I see.
Yeah.
Is that something that reflects how the scene felt to you at the time, or is that a preference of yours, or how do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I've kind of come to this method, or this processing method, through about 20 years of trying to develop my own methods and my own style. And so when I first started processing photos, and a lot of people do this too, a lot of their processing involves contrast and saturation. I rarely touch contrast or saturation in my photos and try to get the color and the atmosphere to feel as realistic as I can. And so if I can create a photograph that doesn't rely on me having to pump the color up on it or something like that, then I feel that that's personally, I should say, personally, I feel more accomplished if I can create a photograph that I can process less in post. So the least amount of processing that I can do, the better I am. It's about trying to get the photograph right in camera in the field, and then trying to interpret that in a realistic way, but yet a more in a emotional way, or a more beautiful way. I mean, try to be realistic, I guess, is the short answer. And so I don't really rely on pushing my saturation up. I did when I first started, but it's just kind of, I've just kind of gotten away from that, and I've gotten to where I am now. It may not be as impactful when people that are non-photographers look at it, because a lot of people that are just beginners, that are just throwing a lot of saturation and a lot of color and a lot of contrast into their photographs, they get a lot of attention from non-photographers. But I'm doing this for myself first, and I'm not really doing it for my audience. Maybe they might be second, the viewers that are looking at it, but I have to, I have to be satisfied with the photograph first. And so I'm trying to please myself, and to try to push my photography to a place where I feel honest about it. I mean, I feel pretty honest that this is kind of how it looked that day. And I probably could have added more saturation or color to it, but I just didn't really want to. The another one over here, this one here, I've got no saturation added to that, but there are ways to be able to do some processing that will allow you to get a more cleaner and more impactful color without touching the saturation slider. So this one here may be
Gary,
little bit punchier than it was in real life, but not much. Go ahead.
yeah, quick question about this one called to mind. I recall that you don't use filters too much. I know you're a strong proponent of the polarizing filter, but other than that, you don't really have very many filters in your bag.
Mm-mm.
Is that right?
I really rely on my circular polarizer.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I spare no expense on my circular polarizer. I do have a neutral density filter, an 8-stop neutral density filter that I'll pull out every now and then, but that's rare too. And typically the only time I'll pull that out is if I can't extend my shutter speed because it's too bright outside.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I have the freedom to be able to come back to that very same scene when the light is a little bit better, maybe a bit more subdued, maybe later in the afternoon when it isn't quite so bright, and get it without a filter. But as Pat said, I do a lot of forest scenes and a lot of creeks and waterfalls, and I rely on my circular polarizer to take the shine off of the forest. A lot of people use it for their skies. I rarely use a circular polarizer for my skies.
Mm-hmm.
Most all of my circular polarizer work is done on foliage and water, creeks, to take the glare off the creeks. And so a lot of the photos that you'll look at in my portfolio that I've done here in Oregon, especially of the forests and the creeks and stuff like that, you'll see a lot of nice saturated green. And it's because I've been able to take the shine of the sky off of the surface of the leaf and let the color come through.
Mm-hmm.
So
and this one, Gary, has the look of a long exposure. It's just so calm. Was it really that calm, or did you lengthen the exposure to get that nice mirror look to the water?
It was such a beautiful, peaceful, that was only 1/3 of a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you a little backstory about this too. Is my wife and I had just started dating, and we had gone down and we sat down at the side of the Turnagain Arm, and we're sitting there, and the boar tide went past, and that was kind of fun. Right after the boar tide, the beluga whales started surfacing in front of us.
Wow.
Probably maybe 25 or 30 yards away from us out in the water, these white beluga whales were coming up. There was a seal along with them too. And not too long after the beluga whales, left, then all of a sudden the sunset hit. So we were sitting there and it was almost like this beautiful date, we're sitting there watching these beluga whales and the sunsets and all this stuff, so
How romantic.
yeah, it was pretty romantic, but it was just a beautiful, calm, warm evening. And so, yeah. Let's see. This is up at the Glen Alps overlooking the city of Anchorage. And this was, let me see, this was taken at 7:00 in the evening. So it was about 30 degrees below zero when I took that too. It was cold, really cold. This is the Talkeetna Mountains. This was taken from near Palmer, Alaska. And this was in the wintertime around the sun had set and we were starting to get the belt of Venus or whatever they call that in the sky. It was just really pretty. And this is a photo I really like. This is, I used my long lens, was able to use some lens compression to be able to bring Pioneer Peak closer to this farm and made the background fill the frame. Instead of backing off and having just the whole peak in the frame with the sky, I moved in on the farm and then made the mountain the backdrop for the photograph. So I may have put a little bit too much snow in the foreground here, but I kind of like the way it looks. So, and this is another kind of an abstract that I took of some ice on top of the Matanuska River. This was another day that was really, really cold. I really enjoy Alaska in the wintertime. A lot of people, they ask me, isn't it just too cold or something like that? The first time I went to Alaska, I brought all my Oregon cold weather gear with me. And the first stop that I made after I got off the plane was at REI to re-outfit myself with a new jacket, new long johns and wool socks and all kinds of stuff. So once you're prepared and you're dressed properly up there, then it's really not a problem. I don't have a problem with it. So.
And that begs the question, Gary, what about your gear in such extreme temperatures?
I've never had a problem with any of my gear, but I've never been out for hours in -20 or -30. It's typically for about an hour or so. And then we're running back towards the car or some shelter or some sort. So I shoot with a D850 Nikon and I've never really had a problem with it. So I've had battery life is shortened, but as far as the camera operation is concerned, I've never had a problem. So there's some blue ice that's up on the Matanuska Glacier. Just love the blue ice. This is on the Matanuska Glacier too. This is just before sunset. It's a beautiful sunset. Doesn't have to be bright red. This is on the Matanuska Glacier as well in the wintertime. I may have punched up the blue on that one a little bit. Here's my wife, Darlene, at a big ice formation on the Matanuska Glacier. That's a beautiful scene on the Matanuska Glacier there. It's like a photographer's playground. We go up there and we spend the day. We get tired. We spend the whole day out there wandering around on the glacier, taking photographs. This is looks like a water, but it's actually ice at sunset. And this is Joe Reddington's boat. This is out on the it's on the inlet. It's near Wasilla, out on the inlet. So what happened is the fellow that owned this boat was Joe Reddington, who was the fellow that created the Iditarod. And him and his wife back in the old days used to take this boat and bring it up to where they used to live across on this side of the inlet. And that was their transportation. And then it ended up getting stranded on the mud flats out there. And it makes kind of an interesting foreground. And then the background is the Chugach Mountains as well. So sunset. This is the same farm you saw earlier, and you can see the mountain behind. how I backed off on this one. This is taken during the maybe August. Maybe hold on a second. That could be in. Now I'm curious. That one was taken in March 10th. So that was in March. That's Pioneer Peak. This is the major peak in the Palmer Wasilla area. You can see it from almost everywhere. So
Gary, would you mind, just so we can see the comparison, going back to the winter scene of this, where the mountain is so far pulled forward?
sure. This
Like-
was taken from the same spot too, Pat. Okay.
Yeah, different lens though, right?
Hold on, I'll tell you here in a second.
Okay.
This one was the
Wow.
one where I had zoomed in on it.
Mhm.
Let's see, that one was that was shot at 150 millimeter. This one was shot at 85 millimeter.
Mhm.
So I could have used my 70 to 200 on both of those.
Yeah,
So
yeah, the snowy one is just phenomenal. I just love that picture.
thank you.
I mean, the
Pat.
one with the snow in the foreground.
I really, there's something about that picture. I was really proud of it when I took the photo.
Yeah.
And I think it's the background. If anything bothered me, it's the negative space in the foreground. I hate negative space. I don't know. There's something about it. I have to have something that some sort of texture or some subject or something that fills my photograph. I hate plain blue skies, for instance.
Mhm.
It's just something that bothers me.
Well, that works in this one. It's just so intriguing to see that negative space there.
Yeah, it kind of makes you look to see what it is, but it's a field of snow is all it is. So
Hey, Gary, this is Ron. I got a question. How often are you seeing a picture and going back to it? And how often are you opportunistic and just take the picture where you are with whatever weather you got?
it depends where I'm at. A lot of times if I'm traveling, I don't have the convenience to hang around or come back. But if it's an area that's close to home, I'll hit it. I'll go back there as often as I can until I finally get what I need. But that, I'm very opportunistic. The Silver Surfer, the guy that was on the mud flats down there, I damn near jumped out of the window of the car to get that photograph, But yeah, if there's a place where I really want it in a particular light, then I'll certainly go back to it. Absolutely. If I have the opportunity. So, yeah.
Thanks.
It's hard for me to settle for something. If I have something in my mind that I want, All right. Now this is the Colony Glacier, and this is on the frozen Knik Glacier. The reason I put up with that negative space up there was just because I had no choice. This was, a lot of these aren't necessarily wall hangers. I take these photographs because of the experience. So some of these are like my snapshots. This was a beautiful day. I flew in with a friend in a Super Cub with Tundra tires. We landed on Lake George, completely frozen lake. We walked over to the face of this glacier and saw these towering blocks of ice. And it was just a remarkable day. This is the same day. These are frozen blocks of ice that would have been floating in Lake George, and they were captured when it froze. In the background, that's the Chugach Mountains too. So this is
Gary,
Yes.
you've been going to Alaska for a number of years.
Yes.
Have you noticed a big change in the glaciers?
Well, yeah, they're all receding. My wife had lived up there for 20 years. I've seen it'd be almost 25 years now or 30 years now that she first moved up there. She's seen the largest difference. There are some glaciers up there that don't seem to change that fast. Then there are other ones that seem to be changing very quickly. Portage Glacier is one where you used to be able to go to the visitor center and be able to see it from the visitor center, but now it's receding around a corner and it's going up. And so that one's receding really fast. But I'll tell you, these glaciers are just so immense and so massive that we've got a little bit of time left to be able to document them, but they're going fast. Another one is down in Seward, I can't remember the name of it now, but I was able to see, just in 10 years, a huge difference in that glacier down there too. So they're definitely receding quickly. And if you notice, if you take and compare photos over the years, that's the best way to see how fast they're receding. So, but I've done a lot of flying over Alaska, and there's these huge, massive ice fields, and there's literally thousands of glaciers in Alaska. It's just a huge place with a lot of ice. So yeah, it's a shame to see some of them that were so easy to get to become recede so far back in. So it takes an effort to be able to get into them. The ones that are the most impressive to me are the ones that you have to get to in the ocean through, like the Prince William Sound, the Tidewater glaciers. Those are the ones that are calving off. You can kind of see where they used to be with all of the bare rock, and then where they are now. And so, yeah, the Matanuska Glacier itself, I haven't noticed hardly any recession at all on that one, but I talked to the guy that runs the place, and he said that it's changing a lot at the lower end. So yeah, the glaciers are certainly being affected by the climate. So we're fortunate that they're not receding and going away as quickly as the alarmists want everybody to really think that they are, but they certainly are. Absolutely. So I don't know if that answered your question, but 10 years for me isn't a lot of time. I mean, to be able to see a huge difference in them. So at least the ones that I go to. So, like, as I've been told that there are some in the Prince William Sound that are receding in an extreme alarming rate. And then some of the other ones up in the mountains themselves seem to be, some of them are growing, is what I've been told, but I think those are in shady parts or something. I'm not sure. I'm not really a climatologist or a glacier expert. I'm just a guy that takes pictures of them. So and this is the Prince William Sound from that little Super Cub that we were flying around in. This is the Chugach Mountains at sunset, taken from the backseat of a Super Cub.
Gary, I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that you don't use contrast or saturation very much, but your photos all have a very wonderful intensity to the color, even when the colors are subtle.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is that just the way you saw them, or were there some other things that you do to enhance that, or what?
I try to be as accurate as I can. There are times when if I feel that there needs to be a little bit more color, I won't back off on it. I have a method that what I do is I have how do I explain it? I use blending modes and luminosity selections, and I'm able to create a selection. A quick way to do it, to explain it, is to go, when you're in Photoshop, you go to here, hold on a second. You guys want a quick work or processing lesson here? It just take me a second to show you what I do here. And this is kind of the best way to describe it. Okay. Now let me see, what have I got here? Let's bring one up and show you how I do this. I'll show you how to increase the saturation without increasing the saturation or touching the saturation slider. At least, how's that sound? Let me look. What do I got here? All right, this is a raw file. Let me bring this one up here. All right. let me, oh, I already know about that. Get off there. How do you? What the heck? Should be able to get that off of there. It wants to give me a tutorial about, hold on.
Click get started.
I don't want to. Oh, okay. I must have had an update and it was giving me hell there. So I thank for the help. All right, now let me just, I want to reset this thing. Export, set to raw defaults, right? Cancel. Oh, let me just bring it in here. Let me bring it in Photoshop here. Of course, I'm going to fumble around because I got an audience watching me. So I go here to my channels and then I'll go to, and I'll hit my control button and I'll left click on the top one. And you'll notice that it created a selection. And that selection is actually a select, it has selected the luminosity of the photograph. So it's created the lights to dark. So right now it has selected the brights. And so if I were to take and copy that, hit Control C, and then hit Control D to deselect it, and then hit Control V, it creates another layer on top of that. And if you notice on this layer, it's got all of the brights on there, but none of the darks. All right. So now what I do is I'll go through here and I'll change the blending mode to soft light. And can you see the difference? And then there's times when I'll vary the opacity, come down with it. So that wasn't a huge difference, but you should be able to see. Can you see it on your screen?
Yes.
So what I've done now, and you can see that it bumped the saturation up without even touching the saturation slider. Did that kind of explain how I go about that? Was that you, Randy, that was wondering? Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. And it doesn't apply the saturation to the whole thing. If for some reason I wanted to, if I wanted to vary that, what I'll typically do is I'll just vary the opacity so it's not as intense. I'll start down here and then bring it up to where I want it. So, but this one here is it's got enough saturation the way it was. Did everybody understand? Did that help?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. I love it. I love it when I can show new processing techniques to people too, especially. So, all right, let's get this back up here again. And I also have a way that I do something that's similar to an Orton effect. And so I'll create a luminosity effect that's like that. It's a little bit more complicated, but an Orton effect, I'll apply a little bit of an Orton effect sometimes to it. It's usually just slightly. But most of the time it doesn't. A photograph like this wouldn't have anything like that done to it. So this is the up at Hatcher Pass is the gold mine, the gold court. This is the Independence Mine at Hatcher Pass, and this is Fishhook Creek. This is looking over Hatcher Pass towards Willow, Alaska, and we were just watching the beams of light go through. And this is the road that we were driving on. It goes down through there. So Denali. This is Denali from inside the park. I've been pretty blessed with seeing the mountain almost every time I've been up there. And it's just massive. If you've never been to into Denali to see the mountain itself, is just incredible. This is the park bus. When you go to Denali, you can't drive in. You can drive a certain ways in. It's just a very short way into the first interpretive center. But after that, you have to take a bus. So what we do is we get on the bus and get all of our gear with us and everything, hop on the bus, and then we can get on and off the bus as we go. So there's always a bus coming and going. And so you can get off the bus and wander around, take pictures if you want, dodge grizzly bears, and get back on the bus again. So we took our workshop through Denali this last year, and everybody had an absolute blast. We were able to see grizzly bears and all kinds of stuff. So this is another view of Denali. This was one of those opportunistic photographs that I took. I was driving down the road and I saw this reflection. I was coming back with some private clients of mine, a private workshop, and I had them with me, and we have been shooting the aurora all night long. We were about ready to fall on our faces, and there was still aurora in the sky. So we were going back to our hotel and saw this little pond, and we decided to take this shot at the very last minute. So, and the reflections, we love the reflections too. This is near Girdwood, Alaska. This is actually over on the backside of the Turnagain Arm on the Kenai Peninsula. And this was an amazing night. This is another night where the aurora just was absolutely filling the night sky. And I was able to see this phenomena called Steve and photographed it. So if this is kind of it's not the aurora, it's separate from the aurora, and it's some sort of proton arc or something like that. Again, bear with me because I'm not a scientist or a meteorologist or anything like that. All I know is I see a pretty scene, I take a picture of it. And it was kind of cool because the Steve, which is an acronym for something, crossed over the Milky Way over here too. And this is at Portage Lake. That was a night where we didn't get a whole lot of sleep. We were running around taking photos of the aurora. This was it too, the same night. This is a different night, and this is the green aurora down on the Turnagain Arm. Same location, vertical photograph. This is my wife and a couple of my clients that are sitting down at, this is at Moose Lake. This is at Moose Pass over on the Kenai Peninsula. And we were able to get these aurora reflections in the lake. So we do group workshops as well as private workshops too. So there are times when I'll be hired by a client to drag them around and help them take epic photos. I love my private clients. We really are able to bond and have a good time together. This is tundra, and this is up in the Palmer Lakes over by Palmer. Oh, I wish my wife was here. She'd be able to tell me. This is over by Hope, Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula. If you look in the tundra here, you can see berries and all kinds of different colors and stuff in the tundra. I just love the tundra. It's just beautiful. My wife sat down right here in this area here. And when she got back up again, her pants had purple spots all over them from the berries she was sitting on. This is a really remote area out here. It took us quite a drive on quite a dirt road, and then we had to get out and hike to get up to this area.
What time of year is this?
That one was August. I love to go up in August. I mean, if it's not colder than hell up there, I like to go up in August. August is a time of the year when the weather is still good. It could be rainy, but the weather is typically coming off of summertime into the fall. The foliage is starting to turn. If you get there at the right time, you get some nice fall colors, and the tundra even turns colors like the fall leaves do. Not only that, but in the summertime, it doesn't get dark, so you can't see the aurora at nighttime. So in August, the nights start getting darker and you're able to see the aurora if it comes out. So I love August. August in Alaska is probably my favorite time. Not only that, but the bugs are kind of gone too. You get up there in the spring times, springtime in certain areas, the mosquitoes will drain all the blood out of you and before you have a chance to run back to the car. Now, this is a photograph of the aurora over Anchorage. We were up in the mountains and got to a point where we could look down over Anchorage and get this photograph, this beautiful aurora that night. This is straight up. This is one of those incredible nights. There was blue aurora, there was green, purple. There were these bursts coming out of the sky. There was these rivers of aurora flowing through the sky. This was basically taken straight up above my head, as was this one. And these are moving. They're constantly moving. So there was these bursts of white, kind of whitish light, and then they would go away, and then these flows of colors would go around where those white lights used to be. And it was just I could never explain it the way that it was.
So Gary, on
Shutter
the
speeds
auroras,
were they?
What's that?
on the auroras, like what ISO are you using, and what kind of shutter speed?
All right. The way I photograph aurora, I made a big mistake the first night that I was taking a photograph of an aurora. Down here in the lower 48, I don't know how many people have taken a photograph when we were able to get some photos of the aurora down here, but you have to use a long exposure, like 20 seconds or so. And up there, if you raise your if you extend your shutter speed to over 5 seconds or so, it does the same thing that it does to water. Because the aurora is moving, you don't freeze the definition of the aurora. As the aurora moves, it blends together into just a kind of a smeared green or a smeared light. So you want to be able to keep your shutter speed slow so you can freeze it and not have it blend together. So you want to make sure you trust your ISO, raise your ISO. You don't want to underexpose your photos. And this rule applies to any kind of photo that you take, especially in dim light. Trust your ISO. It's better to have a higher ISO and not have a photograph underexposed that you have to raise the exposure in post than it is to have a lower ISO and an underexposed photo. So raise your ISO and try this someday. Go out at nighttime or take some photos where you know it's going to be dim, and then have a lower ISO, like 800 or something like that, and then take a photograph and have it underexposed, and then raise the exposure in Lightroom and see the grain. And then take another photo where you've raised your ISO up higher and your exposure is better. All right. And you bring it into Lightroom and then look at the difference between the grain in the 800 ISO and the 2400 ISO, or whatever you have to be, 1600 or whatever it is. All right. You can actually have a cleaner photo with a higher ISO by not underexposing your photograph. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so you want to be able to bring your ISO up to a point to where you've got a shutter speed that's fast enough and you're not underexposing your photos. Okay, and that's how I photograph the aurora. I trust my ISO. I don't want to underexpose it. And hey, if you have to lower your exposure in post, that's good, as long as you're not overexposing. So I always push my ISO and keep my shutter speeds fast as I can. Couple seconds, less than 5 seconds. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much, Gary.
Certainly, you bet. There was another question too, I heard too. No? Okay. Cool. All right, here's another, we talked earlier about me starting wide and then moving in and trying to take segments and parts of the landscape that are so immense that I just find this order and pattern in the scene, and then I'll zoom in and take a photo of it. And this is one of those scenes. This is up on Hatcher Pass, and you can see how the tundra is turning yellow and red in color, and it's still not gotten its full color yet. So
Gary, this is like August then, or?
This one is, let me look here and I'll tell you exactly what day it was. It was this is actually September 4th of 2016. I took this one. So September. I just can't describe how beautiful the fall is in Alaska. When the trees are turning and the tundra is turning red and orange and yellow, it's just indescribable. It's just indescribable. This is Willow Creek. This is just a standard landscape photograph. It's just such a beautiful place. And that's something else too I like to explain to people is that shutter speed is a half a second. Oops, where did it go? That shutter speed is a half a second. So I rarely extend my shutter speed when I'm taking photos of water past a second. And one of the reasons is that you can see the splashes in the water and the streaks in the water. And if you go past a second or 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever it is, you lose all of that. You lose all the texture in your water. All this becomes whiter and whiter. And even in the white spot, you can still see some sort of pattern or texture in there. So I like to keep my shutter speed somewhere under a second when I'm photographing water, unless I want it really fast. If I want a crunchy, more, quicker water, then I'll do a faster scene. But I'm a sucker for some nice texture and some nice flow in your water like that. So wintertime, little ice flowers on the ice here. This is the Knik River. This is the same background of the very first photo I showed you guys of the aurora the first day that I was there. So this is very close to the same place, but this is a different time of the year. And here's a vertical format photo of the same scene, different place on the ice, but the same scene. So and something else too is that a lot of people ask me if this is focus stack, and it's not. If you understand hyperfocal distance and understand minimum focus distance and how the closer you get to your foreground, the blurrier your background is going to be. You start backing away from your foreground, moving into it to be able to bring some clarity into the back of your photograph. And a lot of times you'll be able to take a photograph like this without having to rely on focus stacking. Although there are times when focus stacking comes in handy when you're really getting those flowers close to your minimum focus distance on the lens. There's just no way the background's going to be in focus. So you're going to have to do some focus stacking. And the way I feel about it is that even when you're standing out there looking in the distance, the atmosphere of the air itself causes diffusion in what's in the distance as opposed to what's in the foreground. So the flower is always going to be nice and crisp because it's going to be right close to you. And the mountain in the background is going to be a little bit fuzzy, even to your eyes. And so settle for a little softness in the background. It separates. Having softness in the background and a crispness in the foreground separates the foreground from the background. So that's how I feel about focusing. So the way I focus is this. I focus out to infinity, which makes my foreground blurry, right? Then what I do is I bring it back until that foreground just comes in focus. And then the focal plane isn't moving behind you. It's all being pushed out in front of you. And I also stop down as far as I can. I would rather live with a little bit of lens diffusion than something being out of focus, if that makes sense. So a lot of people will say, well, you're stopping down to f/18 or something like that. Are you worried about lens diffraction? And I go, no, I'd rather have it in focus and then deal with a little bit of softness that's caused by maybe some diffraction or some diffusion in the lens itself. So there I got on my focus soapbox. So I want to speed through here. You guys are really patient with me here, and I want to get through here. So I got some more photos to show you guys. That was in a blizzard. That was really cool. This is a beautiful scene. You can see the moon up there in the sky, and everything was just covered in frost. That's a traditional Alaska cache, keep the bears out. Here's the Knik Glacier, the toe of the Knik Glacier. You can see the moon in the middle up there. I had to place him up there to break up that sky a little bit. The mud flats on the Turnagain Arm. There's a glacier right above this this is all fresh glacial fed water. As is this. This is taken at Whittier. This is Whittier Creek. Absolutely beautiful. And the way I bring the color out is with my circular polarizer. I take all of the glare off of the foliage as well as the top of the water. I use Stingray filters. I swear by my Stingray filters. Beautiful light. It's like it's gray, 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 and all of a sudden the light peeks through the clouds and you just go, oh, it's so pretty. As is this. This is some light, some nice diffused light through some mist in the sky. I just love these kind of photos. Okay, this is Fishhook Creek. So another one's probably about a half-second exposure. That's the same creek further up into the mountains. Same one further up into the mountains. Hatcher Pass. There's the boar tide. These are these guys surfing this boar tide. It's a kick. Seaweed. I like to do close-ups, semi-abstractions and stuff like that. That's a good one where you can see where the glacier used to be and where the glacier is now. Well, this is at the toe of Surprise Glacier. I add a little contrast into this one because I wanted to get some of the texture. I love texture sometimes. But you notice that I didn't pump up the saturation real high on that color of this one. Same glacier. This is coming back from visiting the glaciers. I took a workshop out there, and this is out in the Prince William Sound as we're coming back to Whittier, a rainbow displayed itself for us. This is a Nash Rambler in the tail race down by the Knik River. And they put old cars in there back in the 1950s or 60s to shore up this bank. And I'm walking through there looking at all these old classic cars all dented up and stuff, wishing somehow they could be extracted and restored, And this is down in Seward. That's Moose Pass, the same lake that the Aurora was in the background of here a little bit ago. Now here's some stuff from the sky. I took these from that Super Cub. I like doing aerials. I have a drone, but it scares me when I fly it. I don't know, I'm a nervous drone flyer. Plus, there's fewer places you can fly them at anymore. So if you look close, you can see a guy had landed his airplane down there. This is over on the Kenai Peninsula. That water is coming down off of a glacier. It's all silt-laden glacial water. And I didn't change this color either. None of these colors have been changed. More glaciers. And this is a braided river, glacial river. As is this. This is like this stuff down here at the bottom is what I just showed you. And these are the Kenai Mountains in the background. And we're up in this was in a Cessna 180 that we were flying around over the Kenai Peninsula in. This is a glacial laden river as it meets it's actually the Cook Inlet over here. You can see waves from the ocean over here. I cut it off right there. Negley Store in Talkeetna, Alaska. We go visit some really cool places. And I just took a picture of a rock one day. Knob Lake. This is further north in Alaska. You can see how the trees are stunted in growth. And this is fireweed in the foreground. This is a snow.
Gary,
yeah.
Sorry, just so you know, your pictures are a little bit behind your narrative. I don't know if you see that yourself, but we're looking at I think it's that rock. Now there's a store.
Ah, there's a delay, huh? Okay.
Yes.
Let me know when you see pink flowers.
I'm seeing
Okay.
fireweed.
You see the pink fireweed?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's your pink flowers.
Oh, good. That's Knob Lake. That's halfway between Anchorage and Fairbanks. You can see the stunted trees. All right. Now I was going kind of fast there because I know you guys, I don't want to bore you guys and I want to get through this. So this is actually snow that the creek has augured out the underneath of. And so I kind of got myself in there. I didn't want to go too far in there. And I got these beautiful photos of this, the blue snow. Wildflowers in August in Alaska. Not very, I don't, where I go in South Central and Northern Alaska, it's not the same as it is down in the east, southeast. It's more forest and ferns and moss and stuff down there. It's kind of like what it is around the Pacific Northwest. And this is kind of down in that area. This is down in Girdwood. This is a very, very remote place that we went to. It's called, what they call this is Alaska's Yosemite. You can see how the mountains are all completely scoured out from the glaciers and stuff. And so we took a boat out, chartered a boat out and took the workshop out there. We always go to someplace epic. This is another place that we went this last year. This is the Kenai Fjords. This is on the face of Ayalak Glacier. A lot of glacier photos. This is up at Knob Lake again at a different day. Here's another where I foreshortened or used the lens compression to bring the background in. So there, that's the last of that one. Let me show you just a few of my wildlife photos here, and then I'll let you guys go. All right, now buzz through these real quick. So some red salmon in the river. And this is one that's kind of an abstract because I extended my shutter a little bit. Black bear with some babies. This, we were walking back to our truck and it was starting to get dark and the bears were coming out and it was really feeling creepy. And this picture really kind of captured that, you know. So there's a mama and her baby coming down to the river. That's the same mama. We get pretty close to the bears when we go up there, but after being around them for the last 10 years or so, you kind of understand their behavior and understand where to be and what time of the year to be up there. In the springtime, they're a bit more aggro because they're hungry. In the fall, they're full of fish, so they don't care if we're there or not. So they just ignore us. One of the babies. I call this 3 bear butts. Some of the babies. That's a little cross fox that came and visited us one day. He was as curious about us as we were of him. And these are some harbor seals. This was out in the Prince William Sound. There's some sea lions.
Wow.
I like this photograph myself. There's, you know, a person takes photographs and they always have their favorites. And a lot of times they aren't the ones that would be the favorites of the people that are viewing them.
Could you go back to the white, were those seals, the white?
Yeah, these are harbor seals.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah,
Wow.
these are harbor seals.
Mhm.
They're cute. Look at that,
Beautiful, Gary.
look at that little guy. Yeah, I just love Alaska. I really do. I was never a wildlife photographer until I went to Alaska. These bears here are 2 years old. They still have their natal collar around them, around their necks. This is a mama. She started swimming towards us, but the river took her down. The river. We got a little nervous there for a minute. Here's one coming up to us. I just think these bears are just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. This one posed for me, crossed his legs.
How long a lens are you using on those?
I have a 150 to 600 Tamron that I like to use. It's the G2 version. And we're on one side of the river and they're sitting on the other side of the river. So this one was taken, let me see. That was taken at 800, no, wait a minute, where am I at here? 600 millimeter.
Mhm.
Yeah. And my wife just loves taking photos of the bears. Here's a moose that we saw. Another bear. Another bear. Another bear chasing a seagull. These are fishermen will float down the river and they just float right by these bears. Oh, another one playing. These are basically adolescents. Really pretty. The fishermen just ignore the bears ignore the fishermen. Here's a moose at Denali. You can see him down there munching on moose moss or something. And a lot of eagles in Alaska. Now, a story about this one is this was taken out the living room window of my wife's cabin when she lived in Alaska. Woke up one morning, this cow was out there. Sea otters, black bears, more black bears, another black or brown bear, another brown bear, and loons. I recorded the loons singing this last time, and it's really, really pretty. More eagles, and an eagle, and puffins. These are seals on top of these rocks. It keeps the killer whales from finding them. They hide on top of these, not rocks, these icebergs out here. You can see all of these, they're all seals sitting out there. And I was told that they feel safe on top of those icebergs. And whales in ptarmigan, more bears. These bears were different. These were the bears that were up in Denali. You can see a marked difference between the bears. Oh. And a moose. And I think that's it. So that's about it. The rest of it is just people having an epic time in my workshops on the glaciers and things. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, Gary, I have a Giannis again. It's like, when you go out on a shoot, do you have like a kind of like an idea of what you'd like to get? Or do you just shoot and then do you like put together like what, like, I don't want to use the word project, but like what you're showing us, like a show or something? How do you work when you go out?
Well, typically, I'm going to a location, so I kind of have some idea what I'm wanting to come back with. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to come back with it, you know, because everything has to kind of line up for it. But a lot of times, if it's an area that I'm familiar with, or at least, even if I've never been there before, at least I'm somewhat familiar with what it has to offer, then a lot of times I'll plan on some sort of a photograph. And a good example would be, you know, Trillium Lake. I would kind of have some idea what kind of photograph I want to come back from there. But if I'm going to be going out into the Kenai Fjords and I've never been there before, then it's more of a discovery tour and taking photographs of what I discover along the way. So I do try to plan on some of my trips. Like I just took a trip down into Utah and Arizona, and I went to certain locations that I had expected to get certain photographs from. So there is some of that, you know, where I'm expecting to get certain photographs and try my best to try to get them. But the more I do this, the less I take photographs that are recognizable in other people's photographs. You know, I try not to take photographs of iconic places that have been shot a million times. And if I do, then I try to take, you know, try to be there under some extraordinary condition of some sort. So.
Well, so then when you're talking about traveling to Utah and Arizona and you had some pictures you expected to take, what did you base those expectations on?
People that have been there before. You know, it's hard to avoid seeing photographs on social media of epic places if you're a landscape photographer and you you know, most people, they kind of follow, you know, certain people. Well, I've got a lot of friends in the industry, and I keep in touch with, and I keep track of, and we go meet up. And so, you know, I'll go down to the desert, and next thing you know, we got a half dozen people there that I know. And, you know, it's through that circle of friends, you know, a lot of them live closer to these areas. I'll look at their photos and go, wow, I've got to go to that place, you know. But once I get there, I try my best to try to be unique and not copy what I've seen before. But,
I see.
you know,
Good.
yeah. You know, I like to try to be original in all I do. You know, I want to try to make my photos as unique as I can. You know, the ones that I showed you here aren't necessarily my fine art photos that I've taken. I mean, I could show you guys some stuff that I've processed more to be more art pieces. These here, I call these my adventure photos. So, you know, these are kind of like, some of these are kind of like snapshots, you know.
Yeah, there's a fine line between snapshot and something else, right? What defines that?
Right. Well, I just hope to try to take the best snapshot as I can, you know. When I first started taking photos, I was just kind of aiming the camera out there and just kind of not really, you know, composing anything. I was just kind of pointing it at the scene, you know, and taking a photo. And, you know, and you, after a while, you start to be a little bit more thoughtful in the composition of even the photos you take of your kids and your grandkids and stuff, or your dog. You know, you got to put the dog down in the corner and have it all right and stuff like that. So your snapshots even get better, the more your wildlife and your landscape shots get, you know, photos get better. So.
Interesting.
Is that it?
Now I got another one.
Cool.
So
I love questions.
And part of my drive for this group is always like a little bit of insight about how we work and how we accomplish the things we're trying to accomplish. And so I want to ask you, you just mentioned social media.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how big a role that plays in your artistic life and in your business, or whatever you want to, however you want to describe it.
Business more than my artistic life. You know, I certainly gain inspiration from other people, other photographers. You know, it doesn't matter how good you are, there's always somebody out there that's better, you know, and there's always somebody that's got some sort of a technique that they're using that kind of piques your interest, or there's something that makes their photo unique, you know. And so it doesn't matter. I don't care who you are. There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to be an inspiration to you, you know. But I've been a photographer for a long time. Before I was a photographer, I tried painting, and what a mess that was. But I tried my best, you know, and so I learned a lot of stuff through all of the mistakes that I've made. And it's not just photographers that inspire me. I'm a huge fan of Albert Bierstadt, who was one of the Hudson River painters from back in the 19th century. And they were coming out and painting all of this landscape out here before it was real practical for cameras. You know, the big large format camera photographers first started coming out here. A lot of these painters were coming out and painting these scenes in Yosemite and the Rocky Mountains and stuff. And if you go and you look at some of these paintings and the techniques that they used, they did exactly what I explained earlier about wanting a little bit of diffusion in the background. You can tell they did a wash over the back to make it lighter or softer than the foreground. The diffused light that they used that came through the painted clouds that they did and stuff like that. If you have a chance at all, if you're not familiar with Albert Bierstadt, and if you're a photographer, a landscape photographer, I'd send you just look at Albert Bierstadt's paintings, and I think you'll see what I mean. And so certainly everybody gains inspiration, and everybody will be influenced by other photographers, including, you know, the locations that they go to. That's what I get from social media as far as my photos are concerned. But as far as if I had my way, I probably wouldn't be on social media at all. I'd be living in a cabin in Alaska taking photographs for myself, probably, maybe taking them into Anchorage for a gallery or something like that. But social media for me is kind of a necessary evil. I spend a lot of time on it. It's something that I have to kind of do. I mean, I enjoy it because I have friends that I've known all my life that I'm still in connection with, and we stay connected through Facebook and whatnot. But if I had my way, I'd be doing this for the love of it, not the business of it.
So how much time on social media?
I spend probably in the morning, I probably spend an hour or two, and then at nighttime, another hour or two. And then throughout the day, I'll probably check in and out and answer questions, or, see if somebody has emailed me about buying a print or signing up for a workshop or something like that. I tell people that I run my business through this thing now. It's like I can be practically anywhere. And if I've got an internet connection, then I can make a post or answer a question on social media. So I don't complain about social media because I used to work in paper mills and machine shops, and I started at the bottom of a paper machine down in Toledo, Oregon, and worked my way up into engineering in a machine shop in Portland, working on pulp and paper machine equipment. So that was a job that you were there, and your family was a hobby. That was your first, that was your life. And then you saw your family on the weekends and the evenings if they were still awake when you got home, And so that life compared to what I do now, I'll sit on social media all damn day long compared to that, but if I have my way, I would rather be outside and out on a trail or out driving around in my Jeep someplace, but this is my job. This is work,
No, I get that. And I was just curious about how you're doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, no.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you for your presentation. It makes me want to go back to Alaska. And somebody asked a question about the receding glaciers, and I traveled north in 1973, and we stopped at the Athabasca Glacier. And about 25 years later, my wife and I went to that same place, and they have markers as to the extent of the glacier.
Yeah.
And so I stood at their marker for the 1973, and I couldn't even see the glacier.
Yeah.
And I had pretty much the same experience at the Mendenhall Glacier.
Mendenhall. Yeah.
And there's a really good photographer named James Balog, B-A-L-O-G, and he produced a movie called Chasing Ice that is really worthwhile seeing. And if anything, it will make you think that those people who are the most alarmist about climate change aren't nearly alarming enough.
I think I've seen that movie you're talking about, and it's pretty incredible. Another glacier that is that way is Exit Glacier, and I've noticed the ones that are receding the most are the ones that are the narrowest. The ones that are wider don't seem to be as receding as much. But
yeah, the Athabasca Glacier is pretty wide.
Yeah, at Exit Glacier, it's the same way. They have markers, and that's the one glacier that my wife is really surprised about every time she goes back there, because it's noticeably further and further up the canyon that it's in. So yeah, I'm certainly not a denier that it's happening, but a lot of people come to me, and the reason I said that, and it's maybe not alarming, maybe it wasn't the right word to say, but I have people that have never been out and have seen a glacier or anything that just absolutely believe that in another 5 years they're all going to be completely gone.
Well,
right?
Glacier National Park, that may be true.
Glacier National Park is one, but they've been going, they weren't real big glaciers even 100 years ago. I'm talking about in Alaska. All right. People ask me about Alaska, and they may be getting the impression from Montana and the Glacier National Park glaciers and applying it to Alaska. But I tell people that you know, we still got some glaciers to look at up there. They're going fast, but you know, glacier, Alaska's got a lot of glaciers. So, you know, a lot of people are they really think that the whole world is going to be devoid of glaciers in another 5 years. And so, you know, I try to assure them that if they want to go up there, they can still see a glacier. So, yeah. So,
Hey,
any more-
Gary,
yeah,
this is Giannis again. It's like if a newbie wanted to go to Alaska at the end of August, beginning of September, you know, like where would be 2 or 3 places you would suggest the newbie go to get, you know, like some amazing, and the newbie is totally willing to hike, serious hike in, you know, into areas.
sure.
But the newbie's got maybe 2 weeks because his wife says no longer.
I tell you what, you're going to probably want to fly into Anchorage and visit that part of the state. If you go up to Fairbanks, you're pretty much assured to see the Northern Lights up there. And but it's a lot colder, and the scenery I don't think is quite as beautiful up there. So if you want to go see the Northern Lights and, you know, hang around up there, then that's why I would go up there. As far as the scenery is concerned, I'd fly into Anchorage, and then what I would do is I would rent a car and I would visit Denali for sure. And then what I would do is probably go down to maybe to the Kenai Peninsula, spend some time down there. But there's a lot of stuff to do. See, in Alaska, you only got really 2 freeways, or not freeways, highways. One of them goes up towards Denali. The other one goes up past the Talkeetna Mountains up towards Tok, towards Anchorage or Fairbanks in that direction. And so it's not down here where you got a whole bunch of roads taking you to a whole bunch of places. And so you've got all kinds of hiking trails and stuff that you can do while you're in Denali. And that would be the very first place that I would send somebody. But it's going to be about maybe a 4 or 5 hour drive from Anchorage to get up to Denali. I would probably think about staying in Talkeetna or someplace like that. You could stay up there by Glacier at the park, and then just spend all your time in the park. But there's epic hikes in the park. You're probably assured to see wildlife, and you're assured to see incredible mountains, and you could see the Northern Lights, you know. And so that would be the very first place that I would send somebody if they really wanted to go on an adventure. They wanted to be outdoors and go hiking and be out. All right. If a person wanted to take more of a car tour, I would probably send them to other places, you know. That would be the first place that I would send a person. So the second place would probably be, there are places that you can take a boat. So you take a charter out of Seward and go over to Neliwan or someplace out there, and then they can drop you off for a week or 2 and then come back and get you and bring you back again. And those are like super remote places. You know, another place that I could probably send a person would be up to the my brain just dropped out, up to oh doggone it, where are the bears, Darlene, where are you? My wife is here, should be here with me. I was going to say up to Brooks Falls at the Katmai. That's what I was going to say. That requires a helicopter flight out there. And then you're out there with the bears and stuff, and there's stuff that you can do out there. And, you know, and that's pretty remote too. But Denali, I think I'm just in love with Denali, and you could spend a whole week there. You know, literally you could spend a whole week hiking to different places, stuff up there. So I hope that helps. You know, if I sent a person that was just wanting to see as much as they could, I'd send them to Anchorage, tell them to get a rental car, go up to Denali, spend a day in Denali or 2, and then come back, then go up to visit the Matanuska Glacier, spend a day out there on the glacier, then come back. And then I'd send them down to Whittier and have them take a boat tour out into the Prince William Sound, then come back to, then go down to Seward, and then go out into the Kenai Fjords, and then come back to Anchorage and fly out. And you've seen some incredible things, you know, so yeah, different kinds of tours for different kinds of people. It sounds to me like you want to be more out in the backcountry. So the very first place you want to go is Denali. Make that one short.
Right on.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Certainly. And hey, and if you guys ever want to get a hold of me afterwards and have any questions, even if it's for processing or photography or tours in Alaska or anything like that, just get a hold of me. You can Google me, or Pat can get a hold of me, or, you know, find my website. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. So I'm always happy to share. Just let me know.
Right on.
So if anybody wanted to go up and just wanted to hire a guide, then I do that as well. You know, I've taken private workshops up there as well too. So
Yeah, Gary's a born teacher, so look no farther to get excellent instruction than this gentleman,
thank you.
especially if you're interested in landscape, nature, and wildlife
bet.
photography.
I like to share, you know,
Yeah.
I like to make people feel good, like to make people feel, you know, like they're able to, you know, achieve a little bit more, you know, by just learning a little bit more. So yeah, build
And having taken a
confidence.
workshop with you, you're a fun guy to hang out with too.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, my workshops, I'm kind of like the mother hen, you know. Some workshop instructors, they go out there and they're too busy taking their own photos to pay attention to their crew. I've heard that before from other people who've taken my workshops. Especially if you take a workshop from me here in the Columbia River Gorge or around Mount Hood or on the Oregon coast. A lot of times I've already been to a lot of those places. So I spend a lot of time going from client to client to make sure that everybody's taken care of and everybody's getting the shots they are expecting to get. Any questions or anything like that, or suggested compositions and things like that, yeah, I'm all about it. So yeah, I bug the heck out of my workshop people. So
Well, thank you so much, Gary Randall. My goodness, that was just a stellar presentation. And I'm sure everybody was, you know, just on the edge of their seat watching these gorgeous pictures. So appreciate your time. And I know you like to share, but you went above and beyond with this. So we really appreciate it.
well, I think it's a privilege to be able to do this, you know. I still feel flattered when I'm asked to give a presentation. And so I really thank everybody for sitting through it. And the ones that lasted the whole time, you guys get extra credit. So thank
Well,
you
we'll have
very
to have
much.
you back again. I'd love to see what you consider your fine art portfolio, because if these weren't fine art, then those must be something to behold.
I've got sometimes I get a little bit more creative in my processing in some than I do in others. So, you know, so some are more, I feel a bit more compelled to get a bit more artistic with than some of these that are documenting my experiences.
Sure.
But I'd be glad to come back if you guys will have me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So Ray?
Yes, thank you, Gary, very much. And thank you all for coming tonight. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the first Monday for print shares at 6 p.m. Prints in tow. And I'll send an announcement on the Austin Granger thing for a week from tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Thanks again, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Gary. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.